We're talking today about intimacy, which is kind of around those questions that we were just asking about. How do you experience intimacy with people in your life? Because our service series here for the next 4 weeks is about expanding our circle of community. There are a couple ways we could do that. We're doing pretty good this week. We got a few less empty chairs than we've had over the summer, so it's good to see everybody back. But we do still have empty chairs, right? So one way we could expand our circle of community is to have more people here. That would certainly expand our circle of community, and that would be lovely. It's my intention. But it's not the only way to expand our circle of community. There are other ways that we can do so, and one of the ways that we do so is through the art of intimacy that we're going to be talking about today. But why is community even important? You know, there has been a lot of evidence scientifically about the importance of community. So I pulled out one of my books. I hadn't read it in a long time. It's called The Bond. And it was written by Lynn McTaggart. And I wanted to share with you just a little brief reading from her chapter here on Born to Belong. And this is what Lynn says. The every man for himself attitude fostered in the West, particularly in American society, can prove deadly to us, particularly to our hearts. Numerous studies show that people who are self-absorbed, cynical, and hostile to the world are more likely to die from a heart attack. The heart expert, Dean Ornish, has discovered an extraordinary statistic. All the usual risk factors for heart disease, like smoking, obesity, a sedentary lifestyle, a high-fat diet, account for only half of heart disease. Every so-called lifestyle risk factor laid at the door of cardiovascular illness by the medical community has less to do with someone having a heart attack than does simple isolation from other people, from our own feelings, and from a higher power. In that sense, heart disease can be viewed chiefly as a disease of emotional alienation. Healthy adults with good support networks have lower blood cholesterol levels and higher levels of immune function than those without emotional support. So if you are here for no other reason, know that by being involved in community, know that by coming out of isolating yourself, you are promoting your health and your well-being. So we are here for the next 4 weeks to talk about how can we expand that circle of community. So today we're talking about the art of intimacy. And according to a blog that I read on healthline.com, there are 5 levels of intimacy. The first level is emotional intimacy. This is where we feel comfortable sharing our emotions with one another. Now, it's easy to share the positive emotions, right? Happiness and peace and that sort of thing. That all works. But what happens when somebody shows up in that place of sadness, of anger, of hurt? Is it also safe for those ones to be here and to share those places of where they are? Because emotional intimacy asks that we as a community welcome whatever the emotional experience of someone is. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a hard one for me because I want to go right into my unity mode. Because I know that these unity tools and teachings can help us to move through those times in our life where it's a struggle. I know that that divine power and presence is within us to support us. So I found myself very recently with a loved one that I have sharing where they were at, which was at a place of sadness, of upset. And I immediately went into fix-it mode. Anybody ever do that? Yeah. And recognize in that, as I had to recognize within me, I've got to stop doing that because it does not create emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy allows each one to be there with whatever emotion that they're experiencing. And we want everybody who comes into our circle of community to know If you're happy, come join us. If you're sad, come join us. If you're angry, come join us. If you're at peace, come join us. Because we are celebrating and promoting emotional intimacy here. The second kind of intimacy is, I'm going to say intellectual intimacy. In other words, it's sharing of ideas. It's having an idea in mind and knowing that it is safe in this place to share that idea. You may not agree with me, but we share ideas. Now, one of the things that I hear about unity is I love unity because I love coming together with like-minded individuals. Has anybody ever thought that? Right? Well, the like-mindedness of unity is that we all come together because we want to know God better. We want to know the divine better. We want to learn the tools and the techniques and the teachings and the principles that will help us to live deeply fulfilled and connected lives. That's where we're like-minded if you come to unity. But we have a whole diversity of ideas. Each one of us has been created unique and individual. How boring would it be if we all had the same exact idea? How much more interesting it is when we can come together and share ideas. Not to try to convince one another that you're wrong, Christy, but to listen to one another for understanding, to expand our minds into new possibilities. And so there is a level of intimacy that is created when we allow each one to hold the ideas that we each have, and to share and conversate about those. That would be intellectual intimacy. The third one is probably the one we most often think about with intimacy. That's physical intimacy. So when I realized that this was multi-generational service and I had set the topic of the art of intimacy, I went, oh my gosh, how am I going to talk to these kids about intimacy? So I Googled it. How do you talk to kids about intimacy? And you know what came up? How to talk to your kids about sex, right? And some of you might have come today going, oh, Joanne must be talking about sex today. I can't wait to hear what she says. We're not doing that today. But physical intimacy can happen between Luann and I when I reach out, if she's okay with me doing that, and rubbing her arm. When we take time during service to give one another a hug, and for those who are not wanting to have a hug, who reach out their hand and give a hand, we can, for a brief moment, right, have that touch with one another. It's a challenge in Unity churches. I hear the conversation all the time. Do we get away from that greeting time? Because you know what? New people hate it. Some of the people who have been here forever hate it, that huggy time. And on the other hand, I hear people say, that is my only physical touch for the week. Right. So we create an opportunity here for physical intimacy. And for those who are comfortable with that physical intimacy, whether it's for a handshake or a hug, we take time, and it's a safe place for us to acknowledge one another, to receive that touch from one another. Physical, mental, emotional, experiential. The idea of experiential intimacy. Have you ever had an experience where you meet someone for the first time and you go through some experience with them, whether it's an hour or a day or a weekend, and suddenly you feel like they're your new best friend? That's experiential intimacy. That's coming together and allowing yourself to have an experience with someone else that deepens that relationship. Some of you know that I've been gone for a couple of weeks. Gary and I were on vacation. We went camping up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And we spent 4 nights camping on a little lake called Clear Lake. Just a beautiful spot, the only campsite on the lake. Talk about feeling prosperous and abundant. You know, we had our very own lake for 4 nights, right? Except that what came with the campsite and what came with the lake was a man whose name was Joe. When we got there the first night, Joe was sitting at the campsite. And Gary went and had a conversation with him and asked, "Oh, are you camping?" Because we were going to camp here. And Joe said, "No, I just come and watch the sunset every night." Joe lived close by, and in his own words, he would describe himself as a loner. 70 years old, he loved living by himself in isolation in a cabin up there with no running water. Can you imagine? He shared that there are some times in the wintertime where he cannot get the heat in his house above 10 degrees more than it is outside. I mean, this was the individual that Joe was. But he was so wonderful. Every night, for 4 nights, he'd come and we'd watch the sunset together. And 3 out of those 4 nights, we invited Joe to have dinner with us. And we got to know one another. Gary said to Joe towards the end of our visit there, he said, "Joe, you must have so many friends. You're so friendly." And Joe said, "No, I don't open up like this to everybody. In fact, I rarely talk to people. But I can tell when somebody's got a good heart. And I could feel that from you. And that made me want to get to know you." And through those 4 nights of camping, and having Joe come and experience the sunset with us, we had that experiential intimacy. By the time we left, we felt like we'd made a new best friend. Experiential intimacy. The 5th and final type of intimacy is spiritual intimacy. It's where we come together wanting to experience that divine power and that divine presence. And of course, this is why we come together at Unity, to have that experience together. Intimacy spiritually means we don't have to talk each other out of whatever idea you have about God, Connie. It's good. Spiritual intimacy means that we are accepting of the many types of ways that we can experience God's power and presence in our lives. And so these are the 5 types of intimacy that are available to us. The same website also listed 7 necessary ingredients for those types of intimacy. The first one being trust. We have to develop trust with one another. People need to know, as they've been coming over and over again, that I can trust Elizabeth when I share my feelings with her. She's just going to listen. I can trust that. The intimacy builds up as we learn to trust one another. One of our core principles here at Unity Spiritual Center, one of our core values is acceptance. We accept each and every one just the way you are. Acceptance is a necessary ingredient for intimacy. To accept one another however we show up. We have this unique paradox here at Unity that we accept everyone exactly as they are. Vivian, we accept Vivian just as she is with that beautiful red hat, right? And we accept Charlie with or without beard, Charlie. It was fun seeing you without beard for a while, right? We accept Dale and Connie and Will with your beautiful reading. We accept each one exactly as they are, and at the same time, we hold this understanding that all of us are called into even greater depths of being. So it's this interesting paradox that I find. Acceptance and the holding of the understanding that we can all be so much more than we are. But acceptance first. The idea of honesty, being honest with one another. I forget the statistic, but I had it at one time about how many times the average adult lies in a day, and it's a lot. I wish I could remember the number. I just remember being shocked, like, what? No, I don't. I want to say it was 10 times an hour. Think about it, right? Like all of you are going, no, not me. I'm way more honest than that. But in our society and in our culture, it's encouraged that we tell little white lies to one another. Save one another's feelings. I don't want them to not like me. I'm just going to agree and not share what I really think. Anybody do that? Listen, that does not promote intimacy. Intimacy means that we be honest with one another. And it is my intention that here in this circle of community that we feel like we can be honest with one another, to speak the truth to one another. Another level to create intimacy is safety. It has to be a safe place. Our YOU that were up here speaking, Corey's still here, you create heart agreements, right? And those heart agreements are designed so that everybody knows this is a safe place to share. So we create this sense of sacred safety here within this community. I'm going to sidestep for just a moment to talk about something. How many of you know that the United States is now on a list of countries not to travel to? Have you heard that? In that, there are 2 places that travelers are told not to visit when they're in the United States. Anybody know what those 2 places are? Julie? Well, they're the ones that said, don't go to the United States. Venezuela, definitely. I don't think it was China, but somebody else. But there's 2 places within the United States. Yeah. Churches. And the second place, I believe, is shopping malls. Churches and shopping malls. Because these are the places where violence happens. So we are creating a safe place here at Unity Spiritual Center, and not out of fear, because I don't operate out of fear, but out of an intention for this to be a safe place. About a year ago, we had the Westlake Police Department come in and do an ALICE training. And that ALICE training is what to do if there is an active shooter situation. This is why churches are top of the list of not to visit. And so I just want to let you know that on 2 Sundays, on September 15th after service, we'll be doing just a really brief, here's our ALICE plan, just so that everybody is aware. Keeping in mind, it's not out of fear, but out of our intention to create a place of safety here. It's imperative in order to have intimacy. Compassion, meeting one another from the place of our heart. Meeting one another from that place of understanding, from encouragement, from acceptance and love. Compassion is a main ingredient for creating intimacy, as well as affection. What we in Unity would call that power of love, that harmonizing power, is important. And finally, communication. We have to be able to talk with one another, to share from our heart with one another. And so here at Unity Spiritual Center, we've had a long-standing tradition. I think it's been about 20 years that we've been doing a fall program. How many of you have participated in a fall program group in the past? So many, many people. Some of you may not even know what the fall program is. So I want to take just a moment, because the fall program allows us an opportunity to practice all of these things that I've just talked about. The fall program is where we study a book. This year, we are going to be studying Panache Desai's book, Discovering Your Soul Signature. Anybody who wants to can read along with the book. I'll be speaking my Sunday messages on it. This is all going to start September 29th. But what will happen is there will be small groups meeting. And from the back table, I can see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday that small groups are meeting, as well as an online group. And these are small groups of just 8 to 10 people. And it gives you an opportunity to come together and share intimately with one another. Share your ideas, share your emotions, share your experiences, and in the process, deepen your relationships. So knowing that fall program had really impacted certain people, I invited a couple of them to create just a really short little video. And Ed's going to pull up, this is from Gail Haller.
I've been asked to speak about the art of intimacy, and I think it first has to come with trust and love and appreciation for another person. It's not something that comes immediately. I think it's something that you build upon as you develop a relationship. The most intimate relationship I've ever had has been with my husband of 58 years almost. Our relationship has gone through many different changes and ups and downs, and even keels and highs and lows, but mostly it has been a wonderful experience for me, and I know it has been for him too, or we wouldn't have stayed together for 58 years. But it is love and appreciation for the other person and trust.
So I asked Gail, she was here at the 9 o'clock service. I said, Gail, did you experience that sense of intimacy in your fall program group? You need to know. Gail has been coming to Unity since she was a teenager, she said. And last year was the very first time she participated in a fall book study, right? And she said, yes, I experienced such intimacy, such transformation going through a fall book program. So I hope you'll consider it. And Laverne is sitting back at the tables back there. So we have the Youth Wall of Abundance on that side, and we have fall program side sign-ups on the other side. I hope after service today you'll consider joining one of our small groups. So to end, I just want to ask you a question. What did it feel like today to come and sit in the round? I like it. Great. What did you experience? Adjustment. What did you experience? More faces. Bob.
I've been gone for 2 weeks, but I like the new formation of chairs because everybody gets to see everybody.
You get to see everybody. More up close, more personal, more intimate, right? More intimate. You feel a little uneasy. Anybody else feel a little uneasy? I just loved it that the daily word for today and our prayer for this month is all about change and meeting that change, that uncomfortableness of that change. So Diedrich, I honor that you feel a little uncomfortable in this. And I honor anybody else who feels a little uncomfortable in this. And I invite you to walk through that uncomfortable to that place of honesty, of intimacy, of compassion, of understanding. And like Diedrich, I have to practice that, right? Who else has to practice that? So we do have a practice. I let you were all off the hook today. I didn't come back and ask you who's done the practice, but it's coming back next week. I just want you to know. So here's our practice for the week. Become aware of how you show up in relationship with others. Are you expressing friendliness, warmth, understanding? Are you compassionate and kind? You can practice this with the checkout person at the grocery store, your friends, your spouse, your USC community. In fact, you can give it a try today before you even leave the building. Just head down to the community room, right? Find somebody new to connect with because we are expanding our circle of community, hoping the chairs will fill, but know that even if they don't, we can deepen our community with one another as we practice the art of intimacy. Thank you and God bless.